Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration, but this is actually a very special, and I'm your host, Stephen Heinecker. This is a very special Mormon Media Reviews because we're going to be talking to a fellow podcast or YouTuber who has the YouTube 52 Churches in 52 Weeks. This, I believe, is your fourth time on. I think it's perfectly appropriate to have you on because you just returned from General Conference, dude. And we also have this also Holy Week. And so I thought we'd tie it in a little bit. But before we do that, I just want to remind you all, if you want to participate in this month's book giveaway, Battlefields to Temple Grounds, Latter-day Saints in Guam and Micronesia, edited by my good friend, Devin Jensen. He gave me an extra copy, and I said, you give me 2 copies, and I will give 1 away. So that's this month's in the description, MormonBookReviews.com. Put in the subject heading book contest and name and address in the email, U.S. residents only. This will either end either April 15th or April 31st. So get your entries in. My homie,
Steve, how you doing?
Bud, David Boice is in the house. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. I think if we keep doing this, I may be your official field correspondent here.
Yes.
So
Live on the scene from the Ashbury Revival to the General Conference in Salt Lake City to going to far and wide to many, many churches throughout the greater United States. A man with a mission to go and date as many different churches as he possibly can so he can find himself a mate. In more ways than one, probably. How you doing?
That was thank you. I'm humbled by the intro, Steve. So thank you.
So I just want to thank, first of all, I want to also, hey, it's Holy Week. So I just want to, I want to give props, speaking of General Conference, to the churches really starting to emphasize Easter. Start talking about, now people will tell you, let me tell you, this is not traditional Mormonism. This is not the Mormonism of your dad, your grandparents, or your own generation. This is a new thing. Easter over the course of the last year, was hinted at last year. There's some stuff that came out last year about Easter, that they're moving towards more towards Easter celebrations, that they're going to also maybe talk about the Holy Weeks and Good Fridays and Palm Sundays and start doing that more than more in line with how the Protestants and Catholics do it. So I'm very excited about that development. And we're going to talk about Easter at the end of this episode as well. But the main reason David is here is to talk about, let's see here. You went to General Conference this past weekend. I want to ask you, first of all, how did you get tangled up in this whole thing? Because it's obviously you were following in not only the footsteps of D.L. Moody and Jeff McCullough, but here you are now, another Protestant who has come to attend General Conference out in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, I think a big part is obviously with the channel. As I have, I kind of mentioned this in my video that I'll be posting soon, is like when there's this, I think in one of our past interviews, we had someone ask, what is your fascination with Latter-day Saints? And I've been pondering that for a long time, just because maybe it's because it's so novel. Maybe I like the traditional kind of values that you find in the church. It's very family grounded. It's Christ-centered. And doing so, I've had a lot of Latter-day Saints reach out to me and have been able to build some really firm, strong friendships and relationships. And as I've done the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, the Utah-based one question, I've done 2 of those visits. I've had a lot of questions. When is he going to do a third? And as I've done 52 churches in 52 weeks, I couldn't keep doing LDS churches. So started going out and branching off to some of those other restoration branches like Community of Christ, the Church of Jesus Christ, the Bickertonites, and then the Strangite Church. And with General Conference that was coming up, I had a few really great Latter-day Saint friends who asked, are you going to General Conference? And was able to get tickets to not 1, but 2 sessions to kind of understand it. So with me visiting as a guest, as a visitor, I just want to be very respectful. I just want to understand a little bit more, because I think with part of that fascination, as I'm doing my church journey, I feel very often like we're our own kind of apostles. Some apostles, maybe they get in Christianity to be like James and John. They're very short-tempered. Maybe you have Simon Peter, very defensive. You pull out your sword at the wrong time. Maybe there's a Judas. You're in it for money. For me, I kind of see it more like a Matthew. I'm trying to document. I'm trying to learn. But with Latter-day Saints, I find myself being more like Doubting Thomas. where I'm looking at the, the nail marks, I'm examining, I'm looking into things and investigating. So with this opportunity, I had to make the trip just to kind of see firsthand what the benchmark of LDS looks like.
Okay. And so tell me, before we talk about General Conference, it was quite a trek. It was almost your own pioneer trek across the Great Plains and into the Intermountain West. Maybe describe the journey, your pilgrimage, how that
This
went.
this was probably one of the worst drives I ever made.
And by the way, folks, he drives everywhere. He doesn't like to fly, but so he literally drove from Wisconsin to Salt Lake City.
my Jeep is my studio, so I can't change now.
Nope.
But the big part that we encountered was in Wyoming, because driving to Wyoming, um, like there was so much tumbleweed going over the highway.
Oh.
So the winds got up to 60 miles per hour. So the Wyoming Department of Transportation closed down the entire interstate and all the highways. So I was stuck. So I had to find a hotel early on. And in order to make it to General Conference, I had to wake up about 1:30 a.m. when the winds had died down, and then get back on the road to make it in time. And I learned that some of the protesters, they were driving in from New York, so they also got stuck in this. So when you first saw the protesters that Saturday morning, it was there weren't as many as there usually is.
Okay.
But Sunday it was full tilt.
Well, we'll talk about the protesters. But you got into. So did you drive straight through and then just walk right into General Conference as it was going? Like, what happened here?
I got there about, I want to say about 30 minutes beforehand. So I was there on time. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And you were all dressed. I imagine you got up at 1:30 in the morning and got dressed up in a suit and tie, right? And
Yep.
drove the rest of the way. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're dedicated. That's what I love about you. You are not afraid to do the dirty work, man, and put in the hours to put out your product, man. I think that's very commendable.
I got some looks from the front desk at the hotel I was leaving. So yeah.
Yeah, they're not used to somebody leaving a hotel at 1:30 in the morning, weren't fully dressed in a suit, I imagine. So,
No.
okay, so you make your journey out there, and so with 30 minutes to spare, you walk in there. Maybe talk about maybe what it was like walking into the General Conference. Maybe you saw some of the protesters in, which we'll talk a little bit more later, and maybe just kind of describe the sights and sounds of your encounter.
So I had never been to Salt Lake City before.
Okay.
So just to see that winter mountaintops for the first time, and to see how close they are to the downtown area, like it took me a while to get my eyes off of the beauty of that. That was interesting. So I started walking in pretty early on, and like there weren't a whole lot of protesters that Saturday morning, but like you could tell like there was just this certain excitement going on as everyone was walking in. And I was kind of surprised just due to the international flavor that was there, because there was a lot of different people from different countries. So I didn't know if the person to my left or to my right may have been visiting from another country. There were 3 or 4 protesters that morning, and they were shouting out insults, disparaging comments, everything like that. It wasn't until getting out of the first session where things started to get a little bit more chaotic, more toxic, I would say, from that standpoint. But the Latter-day Saints, walking in and walking out with them, I was just so impressed by the example that they portrayed, because they did not get involved in that. There was one protester who would be shouting as loud as possible, and he would have his camera out. So he was looking for someone to walk up to him as he's throwing out all these insults to try and garner a reaction. And no one took the bait to get filmed on that. And even as I kind of listened in to the conversations around me, it's like, are Latter-day Saints saying anything negative? They weren't. They were like, I think the persecution over the last 200 years has been terrible, from non-LDS, but it's almost like they know how to handle that type of sword slinging
Mhm.
when that's thrown at them.
Okay, that's a great observation. And since we're talking about, let's just talk about then maybe maybe you said there were more protesters out on Sunday, and you had also said you did engage with them. Maybe talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. So Saturday morning, I was all dressed up. Sunday morning, I wanted to explore Salt Lake City a little bit more. And so I was just in street clothes. So I wasn't dressed the part. I was dressed as a tourist on Sunday morning. And a part of me almost felt like it was staged, if that makes sense. Because as I was there on Saturday, I talk with my missionaries every other week. And one of the first stories I learned about was First Nephi 8, where Lehi has this vision of, the tree of life, and you have to hold on to the metal rod, right? And as they get to the tree of life, as they're on the metal rod, you have these people in this dream where they're mocking, they're insulting, they're laughing at everyone that's going in for the fruit. And I couldn't help but see like the barricades, these old metal rods itself, walking in with them as you're getting these insults. It's almost like you're living this dream of dreams to a certain extent. It was wild.
Hmm.
Kind of just learning just a very small part of what I understand about Book of Mormon. So like when I was walking in, I almost thought that maybe like, is there a tree of life in here inside the conference center? Just because it was just so bizarre to see that.
Okay, that is very interesting. Yeah, a great analogy. And we talked about that on the phone because I actually talked to you as you were
No.
coming back. So, did you actually interact with some of the protesters?
Sunday morning, I did.
Okay.
So I spoke with a gentleman. I just kind of walked up. It's like, what's the deal with the signs? I kind of played stupid. And he mentioned he was from a Baptist church. I'm thinking Primitive Baptist. And he mentioned, yeah, he had been doing it for 26 years. He has friends in New York, and he mentioned, yeah, they got caught up in the Wyoming gusty wind situation with the roads. And I guess they kind of make it a semi-annual thing for themselves. There was a few other questions I wish I would have asked. I just didn't. But I took the brochure that he gave me. I took a lot of brochures just to kind of see what's all in there. But I tried as well. Just I was kind of walking in when before anybody was walking around there, and like there was a gentleman that had like a fear God type of shirt. It was gigantic with the lettering, and they had like sheets of paper. They almost had like battle plans, or they're just kind of handing paper to each other as to how to handle um, what they want to do. So it just very strange to me.
Did you see the Spirit of Christ operational from those people?
Um, there's a small sliver where I feel like it's coming from a defensive Christian standpoint.
Okay.
So I mentioned this in the video that I'll be releasing is like I used to be very similar to that. Like I would militarize my Bible. I would put in highlights on verses to kind of prove my biblical superiority, and then rain down Sodom and Gomorrah on anyone that I deem to be living in sin. And like again, like when we talk about like maybe there's like a little apostle inside of all of us, like it comes from a place of defensiveness, this Simon Peter kind of thing where you chop off the ear, but when you chop off the ear, how are they supposed to hear the good news? Like we're using our tongues as swords, is obviously that's such a biblical principle. So like I was conflicted to a certain extent just because there is hints of that. It's just that example that I question because I don't see how you build love by hurling insults and being abusive. Psalm 3 talks a lot about with King David when his family's coming after him. he talks about being, the Lord being the lifter of his head, being a shield all around him. Like back in those days, like you'd have like these shields where, you could do hand-to-hand combat, or you could have like a shield for these big, barraging type of attempts. And that's where I feel like with Latter-day Saints, they had this shield all around them. So as protesters are hurling these verbal insults, these verbal assaults, these arrows, these daggers, they weren't phased. So that type of atmosphere was just very intriguing
Interesting.
to see.
I'm told Rebecca Biblioteca, my frequent co-host, was there and saw that there were she saw some Christians or evangelicals, whatever you call that were not as confrontational and more conversational. So I don't know if everybody there has that same spirit. Maybe you just saw the
Right.
ones making the most noise. I do know that there are Christians there that honestly just want to have, dialogue and conversation. So we don't want to like paint with a broad stroke brush. For all you know, one of these years I'll be at General Conference right with them, but I'll probably be ministering to those Christians more than I will be to the Mormons, because I'll be like, man, dude, you need Jesus. But but I do feel that spirit of contention and that sense of attacking people is counterproductive. And I don't think Jesus is out there with them holding those signs. I just don't see Jesus doing that. And I think I can see how maybe Peter, when he was really angry, maybe there's a moment where he's there, but then he learns and moves away from that and then becomes a martyr for Christ. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I did speak with those two gentlemen who had that type of.
Good. Tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, so they were based off a Colorado church, and one of the first things that they mentioned to me is, yeah, we do not associate with that type of toxic behavior. We want to bring LDS to, Jesus Christ. And so they had their own type of pamphlets, but they love Latter-day Saints, is how they termed it.
Okay.
And they want to have fruitful discussions to kind of have a little bit more insight. So yeah, they want to stay away from the circus and the freak show that was going on right up front. They had their own kind of way of doing it. And I told them, it's like, hey, I appreciate what you guys are doing in a much more Christ-like manner, while staying true to your own convictions.
Okay, so this was really interesting. We really delved into that quite deep. But that's interesting to hear this story. So I just wanted to kind of give me an overview of your impressions. I know there's so many things, and you're just going to cover this in your video, so we don't have to get too much. But maybe kind of give me an overview of what you thought about General Conference and the conference speakers, and just, by the way, was it pretty full? I know somebody told me seats like 22,000 people. Was it pretty full to capacity? What was it like, and just the general atmosphere of the speeches and the inside of the building?
Yeah, there certainly was an energy inside. I never knew, it was so clean, Steve. Like I kind of mentioned, like this benchmark, that's more like a business type of term, where they were trying to be first class at everything inside, just when it came to even like artwork and this masterpiece type of gallery and statues. The stage, the auditorium was just top notch. For attendance wise, it wasn't filled to capacity, but I was there for the Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon sessions. I'm sure there would have been a lot more for Sunday and Saturday night. Other than that, yeah, it was something else. But I guess I can kind of get real briefly into the speakers too. The first talk, and I saw your Facebook post on this, was Elder Gary Stevenson's talk, and that was quite an interesting talk with what he mentioned.
Yeah, it was very interesting, because he brought up N.T. Wright, and he brought up about making Easter even more Christ-centered. Also trying to even say that we have another Easter story, and that's Jesus's appearance to the Nephites. I think that they're really striving towards that direction. So I thought that was really fascinating talk that he gave. Now, folks, we're not going to do a breakdown of every one, but that was the main opening address. And I remember posting on Facebook, say, they're coming off to a pretty good start here, and it was cool for you to be in there to experience that.
Yeah, and I was kind of looking around. Does anyone else know who N.T. Wright is around here?
Yeah.
So yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, so just a very interesting kind of start to everything. But yeah, for the actual service, it was just so different with the 2 hours, and like everyone that goes up there, as the leadership is facing you, the congregation, I heard the term 70, or I'm sorry, I heard the term roster, because in the afternoon session, they would do this voting kind of thing, where like, please manifest it. Then you would raise your hand. And I think someone came up to me and like took a photo of me. And I'm like, I'm just doing this because that's what everyone else is doing. I'm not a member, but I feel weird if I don't raise my hand because everyone is raising in unison on this. So that was a little different. So if you see a picture of me raising my hand about voting in and sustaining the quorum of 12 apostles, it's like I'm just doing what everyone else is doing.
Right.
So,
Oh, that's great. I love it. Yeah. Probably.
uh,
Yeah. I guess if you kept your arm down and they took a picture of you, like, what's that guy? What's he up to?
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's
So,
hilarious, dude. Yeah.
yeah.
And I hope that doesn't invalidate it if a Gentile voted. We'll have to check in on that.
I haven't asked anybody, but yeah.
Your heart was in the right place, I'm sure, and that's the most important thing. And they're very forgiving people. That's the one thing I love about the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as well as all the products of the Restoration, is you're dealing with truly some great, lovely people. So now I know I promise you we keep this relatively short. So I just want to maybe tell me a few more highlights of General Conference, and I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about Easter.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, just so many different things that happened there. I think I wasn't there for President Nelson's talk, but I've never seen this before, where when he would walk into the conference center for the first time, it's like everybody was talking, everyone was excited, just the energy was super high, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. Like you could have heard a pin drop and everyone just turned straight to the center as he was walking in. And I'm like, oh, I've never heard this before for one individual before. So that was very different to me. And the same thing at the conclusion of things. Like I kept sitting down because I thought everybody was leaving. And it took me about 15, 20 seconds to realize, oh, President Nelson is leaving. I need to stand up as well, to pay respects. So I found that very, very interesting. But like I got to hear just a little bit of his talk as I was driving, and it was just interesting to see some of the reaction so far about peacemaking. And it's an interesting time because, like Pastor Jeff is doing with Hello Saints, what you're doing with Mormon book reviews. Well, and it's hard for me to put myself in that same camp because I'm trying to go to all these different churches. But just to kind of see it with building bridges is something shifting right now in interfaith dialogue right now that we haven't really seen since what? D.L. Moody, 1899, over 100 years ago. So, yeah,
It's very interesting stuff. Yeah, and there has been interfaith dialogue happening throughout the decades and in our camps at times. And of course, Dr. Christopher Thomas is the president of the Book of Mormon Studies Association, is tied in with the Maxwell Institute. So there's been informal conversations going on between our camps for a long time. But yeah, I think this is a new era. I think that you and me and Jeff McCullough and others kind of popping into the scene just recently. It's like there's something changing. There's shifts going on, and I think a lot of it really I think COVID just changed everything. It changed people's lives, rocked their worlds upside down, and made people question a lot of different things and maybe things that they were doing in their life and all that. So it changed people on a personal level, but it also changed our culture and our society dramatically. So I think it was that was preparatory for people like us to now do something different. Let's do like a reboot and let's try doing some stuff different. This has just all happened organically. We didn't even realize this was going to happen. Neither one of us expected any of what has happened to us. I do believe that that's a sign that we are doing God's will, is because we are experiencing and things that we would have never imagined. So I feel like the Lord has been blessing the endeavor. Of course, Jeff McCullough, his thing has just gotten so huge as well. So I don't know. I find it to be really fascinating. So before we also, I just want to ask you, can you just kind of preview to the audience a little bit of what we should expect for your latest episode dealing with 52 churches and General Conference, and when do you expect to what's your preliminary release date at this time?
Oh boy, this has been one of the most difficult videos to make for me, just because the driving, so I haven't been able to really just sit down and kind of get all my thoughts together. Uh, like I had a number of people asking me, what did you think? And I didn't really know how to answer just because there was just so much that happened. Just the stark contrast between outside and inside. And then some of the talks, like my Protestant brain is like the smoke alarm sometimes with things I would hear. And so I'm hoping to have the video maybe released tomorrow, maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday.
So
So
that
it
would be
should be pretty soon.
so today's episode is going to be released on Good Friday. So look for
Yeah.
it possibly being already live or the next day. So it's right around the corner. So we're excited about that. And anything you want to just hint about anything in the episode that was covered that you want to?
Boy, yeah, you'll see a lot. Let's put it
Okay.
that way.
Okay, well,
So
good. See a lot. That's good. I like
yeah,
that a lot. All right. So it's jam-packed, full of great information, and it's so well produced. You do such a great job weaving the narrative, telling the story, finding analogies, which I really find very thought-provoking. I really love your channel and what it's been doing. I think it's just fantastic. And, I think I'm just really grateful, and I'm grateful to our Savior for what he did for us at the cross. I want to wish everybody a happy, let's say, happy Resurrection Sunday. And Friday, today is Good Friday. Maybe we could just talk a little bit to you about what Easter means to you.
yeah. Boy, I kind of ended with my book on this. Is I feel like by Christ's example, like it's such like I often say like the Christian life is one of death and resurrection. So like when a part of you dies, rise to live again. Because we all have a sob story. We all had something that happened that can bring us down to rock bottom, right in the dirt, like we choke on our dust. And like Jesus Christ hit that spot. And with what he lived through, what he was able to do at the cross, resurrect, come out of it, like he ascended to greater heights. Like that's the thing with Jesus Christ. Like it's not just the crucifix, what happened there. It's not just the resurrection. It's also the ascension. And for him to go up into heaven and then to kind of spread his message throughout all the world, like it's this fire. And it gives us this opportunity when we do rise again in our own type of inside ourselves, like what can we do to share more, create more, do more to be a blessing to other people. So to me, with Easter, with this weekend, I think that's kind of how I see Easter, where it really impacts not just me, not you, but everybody.
Okay, yeah, and it does. The world was, I don't care what anybody says, everybody acknowledges the world was turned upside down because this backwoods peasant from the Nazareth was doing something, man. And it's astonishing to think and contemplate how radically different our world is because of this man named Jesus Christ, who came and sacrificed himself and then rose again. And
Amen.
this is that time of year where we celebrate the defeat of death and the devil, and we are now talking about the redemption of all of creation. And one day we will all be back in paradise again in our original state. And I think that's a beautiful thing to think about and to contemplate. So, my friend, I want to wish you a happy Easter, dude.
Happy Easter to you too, Steve. Appreciate it.
I love you, my brother. You are so cool. And let's continue these conversations, dude. And folks, Latter-day Saints, what'd you think? Tell us. Want to hear your feedback. Evangelicals, tell us. Even Aaron Shalafalop, I'd like to hear from you too. You like to attack me, but you don't want to actually talk to me, but that's fine. I'm going to forgive you because it's Easter. And I love you, brother, too. I even love Aaron Shalafalop, folks, of all people. Okay. So I just want to remind you that our merch store is MormonBookReviews.com. We have hot chocolate mugs. We have ball caps. We have t-shirts, you name it. And also, for those of you who would like to financially support the channel, there'll be links in the description to support us on both PayPal as well as on Patreon. And I want to thank all of those of you who are financially supporting the program. Could not do it without you. And just remember, the most important thing, folks, is remember, all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.